All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2025, number 169, I think. Nice. So, today, according to D&D YouTube, Wizard of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons are dead. And if you have seen any of my videos about topics like this, you know what I'm going to say. They're all talking out of their ass. They want D&D to have bad things happen to it. They don't want D&D to die because then they don't make money. They do want bad things to happen to D&D because bad things create controversy. Controversy creates views. The actual reality of what's going on, to me, actually makes me slightly hopeful for the Dungeons and Dragons. Let me explain. First, disclaimer. I have no contacts at Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that. I do have a friend that works for Darrington Press now named Chris Perkins, but we don't actually talk to each other at all. So, yeah, I have no insider knowledge. What I do have is a decent amount of experience in business and an actual degree in business. And what's happening here mimics things that I have seen, specifically that I've seen in retail. But I've also read about it and heard about it in other business forums as well. So, first of all, disclaimer. I don't have any firsthand knowledge. This is all just me theorizing and using my knowledge of business to interpret what I think might be going on. I could be 100% wrong, but please do not take anything I'm saying here as the gospel truth. This is just me seeing patterns that I've seen before in business and kind of explaining it to you people. Because a lot of people don't have the experience in business that I do and therefore can't quite understand as much about this and won't see the patterns. So, that being said, what has happened recently? Well, obviously, Perkins and Crawford left a bit ago now, and we just got an announcement that they've now joined Darrington Press. I saw a few headlines of Perkins and Crawford backstabbed Dungeons and Dragons. No. D&D was very, very happy for them going over there. They posted a bunch of posts talking about how happy they were. I don't think people quite understand. Dungeons and Dragons is not afraid of Daggerheart in any way, shape, or form. Daggerheart is not going to take any market share away from Dungeons and Dragons. The people that need to be afraid of Daggerheart are things like Pathfinder, 13th Age, Draw Steel, basically all the fantasy-based tabletop RPGs that are vying for second place. Dungeons and Dragons is not afraid of Daggerheart in any way, shape, or form. And guess what? The people over at Darrington Press don't hate Dungeons and Dragons. They don't hate Wizards of the Coast. They like them. They have a really good relationship with them. So these two companies are not competing against each other. They're just two companies that happen to exist in the same market and like each other. That's all it is. So we know about that. However, a few days ago, we got some new information. Todd Kenreck is no longer with Dungeons and Dragons, and neither is what is her name? Jess Lanzillo. And I want to see if I can find out. Yeah, as far. Okay, so that's what. All right, sorry, just reviewing some things. So let's start off with. Let's start off with the one that I think people are less familiar with, which is Jess Lanzillo. She announced that she was leaving Wizards of the Coast. And I'm actually she announced it on LinkedIn. And I don't know if she announced it anywhere else, but I have her LinkedIn post. I'm going to read the entire thing here because it's important based on what she's saying here, because we're going to infer things from it. So, after 8 years at Wizards of the Coast, I have made the totally reasonable decision to leave a job where I got paid to argue about whether fictional lizard people can have tails. Of course they can. My trajectory at Wizards has been wonderfully unhinged, leading creative during an absolutely wild ride with Magic the Gathering, doing business things as chief of staff, and finally getting to be the VP of the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, which is either the best job title ever invented or proof that late-stage capitalism has finally achieved absolute absurdity. Take that, liberal arts naysayers. I really enjoy that last sentence. Wizards turns imaginary worlds into real communities, which sounds fake, but is actually the most satisfying work in the world. To everyone who let me champion the mission while constantly asking, can you add more glowies? You are perfect and I love you. I've been ridiculously fortunate for these 8 years, and now I'm lucky enough to, yet again, get to choose my own plot twist. The best part about having super specific creative obsessions is that occasionally the universe decides to reward you for them. More soon. So, who in the world was Jess Lanzillo? Well, Jess Lanzillo, again, has been at Wizards of the Coast for 8 years. The vast majority of that, she was working on Magic the Gathering, which is not uncommon for Wizards of the Coast employees in general. The Magic team is significantly larger than the Dungeons and Dragons team because Magic the Gathering makes significantly more money. Talk about triple to quadruple the gross sales of anything Dungeons and Dragons does. So she started out at Magic the Gathering. Eventually got to transition, and just late last year was, according to everything I've been reading, was promoted to VP of Dungeons and Dragons, and it was a funky name. So, yeah, it's just VP of the Dungeons and Dragons franchise. So we have someone who was involved with Wizards of the Coast a lot, but was actually relatively new with Dungeons and Dragons, and was bringing over a lot of, let's call it baggage, from working for Magic the Gathering. One of the big difference between a collectible card game and a tabletop RPG, especially when you look at how 5th edition used to be marketed and used to be what used to be their business focus, is TCGs have to continually put out new card sets. Generally, I believe multiple card sets a year. Whereas a tabletop RPG, the more books you put out there, the less people buy them. Whereas a TCG, the more stuff you put out, the more people buy them. Because the game is constantly changing, and there's competitive aspects, and there's actual money involved. You can go to tournaments and win money and things like that. So the idea of we put out as much content as physically possible is a prime thing for Magic the Gathering to do. It's a bad thing for a tabletop RPG to do. And when 5th edition was first launched, there were multiple interviews where people like Perkins, and I think Crawford mentioned this too, said flat out, we're not looking to do what happened to 3rd edition and 4th edition, where we just keep putting out book after book after book after book. We're looking for quality over quantity. We don't want to burn people out. And I think that's one of the reasons why 5th edition has had the longevity that it has, is because for the first 4 or 5 years, they put out books slower than any other edition, and the vast majority of their books were relatively well received. Some of them extremely well received. However, about 5-6 years after they'd been doing that, we saw a shift in how D&D was being marketed, and specifically how it was being developed. We stopped seeing one major book release per year, and we started seeing them put out book after book after book and just shoving things out as quickly as physically possible. Now, this predates Jess this predates Jess being hired as the VP of Dungeons and Dragons, but it doesn't 100% predate when she started sorry, I'm reading stuff here. This isn't 100% based on Jess specifically, because as far as I can tell, until the recent promotion to VP of D&D, she seemed to be doing exclusively Magic. In 2021, which is the last promotion she got before going over to D&D, she was promoted to VP of Creative for Magic, before being promoted again in 2022 to a Chief of Staff role under then President Cynthia Williams. This is coming directly from DungeonsandDragonsFan.com. They wrote an article about her. So I don't know what the Chief of Staff role, if that was exclusively for if that was exclusively for Magic, or if that was for all of Wizard of the Coast. And then in 2023, I was wrong. It wasn't late last year, it was late the year before. She was promoted to Vice President of franchise and product for Dungeons and Dragons. And basically the things that have happened while she has been Vice President have been the new core rule books and Project Sigil. And if you know anything about those two products, neither of them went over very well. Project Sigil is technically not dead. They have not declared it over, but a lot of people have effectively given up on it. The current version of it does not work. Just flat out, it doesn't do the thing that it's intended to do, and therefore, at best, we can call it an open beta. You might even be able to argue that it's an alpha right now because it's still missing key features, which is indicative of an alpha test versus a beta test. So Project Sigil didn't do well. Sales-wise, the 5.5 version of D&D 5th edition, pre-sales did well. Post-sales have lagged tremendously. As far as I can tell from everywhere I've been able to look, pre-sales were high because people were anticipating not what they got. And then as soon as it came out, people just stopped buying it. Reviews for 5.5 have been lukewarm at best. I did 3 in-depth reviews for all 3 books. The only book that I actually enjoyed was the Dungeon Master's Guide, both the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual. I thought were massive step backs, with a few bright points. I think a lot of the monsters in the Monster Manual were interesting, but the complete lack of lore, a lot of other changes that they made just were not necessary. So these are the things that Jess has been attached to. A failed virtual tabletop. As of now, it's possible, again, I've talked about this before, it's possible that they're going to revamp it and get a new staff and everything like that to turn it into something. The longer it goes without them announcing, hey, look, we have a new staff that we hired for Project Sigil, the more likely it is that it's just dead. And then an extremely lukewarm response to what was supposed to be the thing that reinvigorated 5th edition. Because 5th edition has been getting worse and worse over the past few years. Each new adventure seems to be written worse and worse. Each new source book tends to be less and less interesting. They're putting less and less lore in it. And the mood in general is really being is really just cooling for 5th edition, which has been nothing but heat and praise for almost a decade. So yeah, it doesn't particularly surprise me that someone who, despite the fact that she was not in charge for the early parts of this. Like, they were developing 5.5 before 2023. And they were probably working on Project Sigil before she got promoted to VP of D&D. However, both of them launched under her tenure, and from a business perspective, having two failures right in a row is effectively a death sentence. Wizards of the Coast is going to be, and Hasbro specifically, is going to be looking for someone to blame for all the problems that they've been having. And just whether or not she deserves it, because I'm not saying that it's her fault that these things happened. A VP is a VP. There's still someone above her, and there's a bunch of people below her that all could have, that all had to work together to create the kind of slop that we've been getting recently. So I do not believe that she is solely responsible for this. However, someone was going to take the blame for it. And again, reading what I'm seeing here, it sounds like she was presented the option of, hey, you can resign or we can fire you. This is an extremely common thing for high-level executives, is basically when something goes wrong, because the pool of people that can work in positions like that is relatively small when you compare it to just the overall employee market. Screwing over someone at that level or getting them upset with you can cause a lot of issues, because there's a very good chance that they're going to get another job somewhere else at like a pretty high executive level position, and then they're going to be able to make your life miserable, even if it's in a completely different field. Again, blacklists are a thing, and they're not done through like an email chain or something like that. They're done through conversations. They're done through, meetings and parties and the things like that, and gossip and other things like that. So what is an extremely, extremely common practice is, instead of firing a high-level executive, you go to them and go, hey, we will expect your resignation at this point. And what that's basically saying, without actually saying this, is we're going to fire you. However, if you want to get out of this with your head held high, you can claim that you resigned instead of we fired you. Now, when you read her post, like I just did, she specifically says at the end, the best part about having super specific creative obsessions is that occasionally the universe decides to reward you for them more soon. That is meant to imply that she's resigning to take a position at a different company, which is theoretically possible. That might be the entire reason why she's going right now, is she got an offer from a different company. For whatever reason, she wasn't loving working for Wizards of the Coast, or maybe she just didn't love working for Hasbro, or this other company just offered her something that she wasn't getting at Wizards of the Coast. Again, being a vice president is very different from being like a creative director or something like that. Like, vice presidents do business stuff. Creative directors do creative things. So it's theoretically possible she also could be moving from a more administrative business role to a more creative role. Because, again, when she first started working for WotC in 2017, she was, according, again, to DungeonsandDragonsFan.com, she helped spearhead the art direction and narrative of a number of MTC card sets, so Magic the Gathering card sets. So that's a creative position. Art direction and narrative focus. For anyone that doesn't know, there's a story behind every single Magic the Gathering card set, and there's an actual like lore that keeps building and building for Magic the Gathering. It's not just cool cards. Let's make them do things. So that was a creative position, and then she became VP of Creative for Magic, And then she went chief of staff and then VP to Dungeons and Dragons. So it's theoretically possible she's shifting back to a more creative role because that's what she likes. However, with the fact that Todd Kenreck was also laid off, we'll talk about that in just a second here. To me, it doesn't make sense that this is exclusively because, oh, I found a better position. Now, another thing about high-level business stuff. When a manager, when a CEO or something like that, president, vice president, whatever, is going to be fired, they know. Like, nothing happens quickly in business at all. Even firing someone takes a long time. And if you've gotten high enough that you're a VP or a president or a CEO or something like that, you have friends everywhere. And by friends, what I actually mean are people that are willing to feed you information for benefits. So it's theoretically possible she knew this was coming and had started already looking, or it's possible that people had been making her offers for a little while and she'd been turning them down until she realized that, oh, I'm done here. Maybe I should start looking at these other offers. Like I said, it's also theoretically possible this was entirely voluntary. It just doesn't make sense to me from a business perspective. From a business perspective, she is effectively, it looks like she was fired for how poorly things have gone at Wizards of the Coast, and they allowed her to leave with dignity. That's my theory. Again, I have no context at Wizards of the Coast. I don't know who Jess Lanzillo is or anything like that. This is just me reading between the lines and having seen things like this happen before. Fun fact, I've also seen this happen with store managers. So it doesn't have to be super high up, executive level positions. I knew a store manager that resigned after, let's just say something happened at work that shouldn't have, involving one of their employees, and they resigned. So yeah, this is something that happens all the time, and when you're at that executive level, it's kind of second nature to be able to spin something like this of, oh no, I'm going for something really unique and cool. This is my new, this is my new direction and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll find out later. If we find out, in like a couple weeks, she goes, by the way, I'm now working for Paizo, or I'm working for Kobold Press or something like that. Maybe it will be that she actually got a job that she enjoys more than being a vice president. Again, being a manager or a president or anything like that, it's hard work. And if you don't enjoy business and all the aspects of business management therein, it's a job that really, really sucks. Like, you actually have to enjoy, like, looking at numbers and recruitment and all those other things. Like, there's so much to being a manager that just isn't fun, that if it's not something that you actually have a passion for, you're just going to hate your life. So it's very possible that's what happened. I'm not buying it 100%, which gets us to Todd Kenreck. Todd Kenreck is someone that a lot more people are going to be familiar with. Todd Kenreck is the dude in most of the D&D videos that have been going on YouTube that is interviewing people like Perkins and Crawford and everyone else. He's the dude with the beard. He sits there and he asks questions, and then they cut over to Perkins or Crawford or whoever's doing the interview. That's Todd Kenreck. Kenreck himself has a kind of an interesting past. He started off, this is coming again from DungeonsandDragonsFan.com. He started off as a video game and TTRPG reporter for Forbes, and then he moved over to creative manager at D&D Beyond before D&D Beyond was purchased by Wizards of the Coast. So Kenreck was one of the people that D&D acquired when they purchased D&D Beyond. And then in 2021, which I think when they purchased it, I'm not 100% certain, He was hired by Wizards of the Coast as a consultant to support their D&D video content efforts, and was eventually promoted to a full-time senior content marketing strategist in their video marketing department. Effectively, he was in charge of making D&D videos. Specifically YouTube videos from what I can see, but I would assume they probably put them out on TikTok and other places like that, Instagram. If they didn't, that might be why Todd was laid off. Now, the reason I keep saying laid off is because you don't lay off a single person. Layoffs are company-wide things where large swaths of people lose their jobs because the company just simply can't afford to keep them on staff anymore. A lot of times layoffs. And the reason specifically you were called laid off versus getting fired is because getting fired has the connotation of you did something wrong and so they ended your employment. Laid off is you did nothing wrong, the company just isn't doing well. When you're looking for a new job, saying you were laid off is significantly better than saying you were fired, because the inevitable question every single time this is basic interviewing 101. You get the resume of the person that you're interviewing, and you'll look through their job experience. You go, oh, it looks like you were here and here. So up until recently, you're working for this company. What caused you to leave there? That is every single interview ever. And it's not one of the dumb, stupid interview questions that are meant to trick you or anything like that. No, this is a really good thing because you want to know why they're no longer at that company, because the same thing will probably happen to this company. And if the reason that they left that company is like, whoa, they were all stupid and they couldn't handle how real I was, well, then I'm not going to hire that person because obviously they have a bad attitude. The translation of they were all stupid and they couldn't handle how real I was, that translates to I'm an asshole and I don't deal well with authority. When you say, oh, I was fired, the next follow-up question is always going to be, oh, really? What happened? What were the circumstances around it? And you can flat out say, I prefer not to talk about it. It doesn't look good. And it's not illegal to not hire someone because they were fired from a previous company. Also, if you just flat out lie to your future employer, one of the other things they'll do is they'll call up your previous businesses and go, hey, this is blah, blah from this company. I just interviewed this person who said that he worked for you before. Can I talk to his former manager or anything like that? And almost always they will, and you get on the phone. And this is where a lot of people kind of misunderstand. A lot of people think that a business is not allowed to say anything bad about you during one of these calls. That's not true. A business is not allowed to say anything negative that they can't prove. Like if I fired someone because they stole money and somebody called me up and said, hey, I'm looking to hire this person, just kind of wondering what your thoughts on them were. I'll go, well, the really common question is, would you hire them again? And in that particular instance, I would go, no. Then they go, really? Why or why not? And my response would be, well, we fired him for cause. He was caught stealing money and we prosecuted. I'm allowed to say that because we have proof that he stole, and if we prosecuted, there is an actual paper trail. There are charging documents and things like that. So if the employee that I've just talked about finds out that I said that and tries to sue me, I can go, no, I said the absolute proof. Here, look, we have that. There's a bunch of other ways. Now, most managers won't do that because just the process of getting sued is expensive and things like that, even if you're 100% in the right. But you are legally allowed to say something like that. So going back to the idea that Todd Kenreck was laid off, I don't buy it. you don't lay off a single person. I mean, theoretically, yes, there are some layoffs that are a single person. 9 times out of 10, it's because they don't have enough documentation to actually fire them. If they do tell you, I'm sorry, we have to lay you off, what they're really saying is, we want to fire you, but we don't have enough documentation to actually have cause to do that, and we don't want to have to deal with a lawsuit for an unjust firing. So we're going to claim that we're going to lay you off, because coming up with a reason why we can't afford to keep someone on staff is remarkably simple. It's especially someone that has been working there for a while. You've gotten enough pay raises and things like that, that they could just go, hey, our new budget said that we had to cut this much money, and the easiest way to do that was to fire you and hire someone to do the exact same job for $20,000 a year less. Sorry, you're being a little laid off. Like, that's a super, super easy thing. But in my experience, which again is relatively limited and is limited to retail, the only time I've seen a single person laid off is when they wanted to fire them and couldn't find cause for it. Or couldn't prove cause. They generally are going to have a cause for it. It may not be a great cause, but they'll have a reason for doing it. But they don't have enough documentation, or the documentation that they do have just wouldn't really hold up if it was if it somehow got out to the public, which will happen in lawsuits and the things like that. So they just claim they laid off. The other thing that this might be is them saying, hey, Todd, you're fired, but we won't tell anybody. So if you want to say that you're laid off, you can. And again, I have seen this happen as well. And effectively what it is when somebody does something that requires them to be fired, but they have enough goodwill at the company that the company doesn't want to really ruin their career. They'll go, hey, we have to fire you. However, we're going to allow you to say that we're going to allow you to resign and give whatever reasons. If you want to say you were laid off, that's fine. We're not going to comment on this, but you're fired. True story. I worked for a company that shall remain nameless, and there was an ASM that they were friends with me. I'd known them for quite a while, and they were closing the store. I wasn't working that day. They got a phone call from someone claiming to be with loss prevention. Now, both me and this ASM were actually really familiar with our loss prevention guy for our district. The loss prevention dude was super cool. For the life of me, I can't remember his name anymore, but he was a massively cool dude. He was almost always available if there was something going on and you needed to go, hey, listen, I think something's happening here and here. He was the coolest dude in the world. And that's why this is such a weird thing to happen. So this ASM, it's a phone call, says they say, hey, we need to have a conversation with you. ASM's like, sure, what's up? We'll call the ASM Bill. Bill is not their name, but Bill is an easy name for me to remember. So Bill goes, okay, what's going on? They go, well, we've got a problem. We have a customer that wants to sue the company because they claim that Jody stole money out of their wallet. And unfortunately, we have video evidence that shows him doing that. Now, this was the first mistake. The claim was the customer had put their wallet on the counter and turned around to do something, and then I had decided to go into their wallet and pull money out and put it into my pocket. Now, in my life, I have never stolen anything, ever. I've never shoplifted. I have never done anything like that. That's not something that I do. It's not something that I support. Second of all, not only was I on the management staff in this store, I knew where every camera in the store was. If I had decided that I wanted to start stealing from customers, which is remarkably stupid and completely out of character for me, why the hell would I do it in front of a camera that I check every day? There are a billion other places that I could have gone to steal this money. There are a billion other ways I could have done it to make it much more difficult to catch me. But no, I did it in plain view of the cameras that I look at every single day. And third of all, they claimed that it was while I was working register. I generally didn't work registers because I was supposed to be on the sales floor. I got in trouble if I was on the registers. So none of this stuff made sense. But Bill, in their infinite wisdom, went, oh, this is really bad. All right, well, what do we need to do? The next question was, how much money do you have in your store? This particular store was in a somewhat lower income area. And because of that, tended to do a lot more cash purchases than credit. Fun fact in retail, if you were in higher end environments and neighborhoods and things like that, you will do a lot more credit and debit transactions than you will do cash. If you were in lower end areas, you will do a lot more cash. So the store that I worked at any given time, like at the end of the day, if it was a decently busy day, we could have $3,000 to $5,000 in cash in the safe, and we would get regular pickups from a deposit company because of how much cash we had in this store. So when he went around and looked, he found around $3,000, and so the guy on the phone that claimed to be with loss prevention, and he did drop the name of our loss prevention guy. So that aspect makes Bill slightly less stupid. Only slightly. He tells Bill, okay, what I need you to do, take all of the cash out of the registers, out of the safe, put it in an envelope. This guy has told us that he's willing to not sue us, which if he sues us, what's going to happen is Jody's going to be fired, and then the lawsuit is going to go against him specifically. By the way, that is a real thing. If you screw up in a business, I've seen this happen in retail. If you screw up and they can show that there's like a handbook that says we don't do this, like stealing from customers, if a customer sues, what happens is the company fires you, says we told him not to do that, here's the proof, and then the lawsuit gets put on you individually. A few $100,000 lawsuit for a multi-million-dollar business is nothing. They can deal with that. They have insurance that'll cover it. A few $100,000 lawsuit against an individual. I knew of one store manager that actually lost everything because they tried to do an apprehension when they weren't supposed to, got sued, got fired. They lost everything. They lost their house, their wife left them, took the kids. They were destitute. It was real bad. So when this guy basically told Bill, again, not their real name, told Bill, hey, if this happens, Joe's going to be fired and he's going to get this huge lawsuit. That technically was a real thing. And so Bill goes, no, I don't want that to happen. Jody's my friend. He goes, okay, so put all the money in an envelope. The guy has agreed not to sue, but he has bills that need to be paid right now, and it's going to take us time to get his money back the proper way. So what we want you to do, put the money in an envelope, go to this random parking lot, and give it to this random person. If you do that, Jody won't be fired. And Jody won't be on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and penalties. Now, if anyone is listening to this story and going, wow, that sounds monumentally stupid, obviously that's a scam. That's what I said when I was called in the next day. We'll get to that in a second. Sure enough, Bill takes the money, goes out. Job well done. The store manager Comes in the next morning, not only finds that there's no cash for any of the registers, but there's no cash in the safe. Instantly calls up Bill, goes, Bill, where the fuck is our money? Bill explains it, and the store manager goes, you're a dipshit. And then immediately calls me. Despite the fact that I was the low manager on the totem pole, I was the most reliable manager he had. So my store manager calls me up. He's like, Jody, you need to come into work now. I go, it's my day off, dude. I'm sleeping. And it's really, really easy. Shut up. Get to the store now. I'm like, be there in 5 minutes. I lived 5 minutes away. Might have been the other reason why he called me. So I drive in. He sees me. He points to the manager's office. We both go in there, and he blows up. He tells me the entire thing, and I go, you can't be serious. Bill is not that dumb. There's no possible way this is a real thing. We must be missing something. Nope. That's exactly what happened. I said, we are fucked. We can't be down. We can't be missing $3,000 in cash. Where are we going to get $3,000 in cash to keep the store running? Like, we need that money for change and things like that. How are we going to do this? He's like, we're dealing with it. However, I need you working today because Bill is off the schedule for a while. The reason I tell you this story, there was eventually an investigation into Bill. They found out that Bill 100% just gave $3,000 to a random scammer in a parking lot. Should have been enough to end their career. They should have been instantly fired, and they could have prosecuted Bill for theft because they did actually steal money. Just because they didn't get to keep it doesn't mean that they didn't steal it. So 100% they could have screwed them over. You want to know what happened? He resigned. No one else officially ever heard about it. We were told we weren't allowed to talk about it. It didn't stop us from talking about it. Everybody in the district knew this is what happened, but officially nobody knew. And now they work for a completely different, they're a pretty high level management position, another retail position. So the idea of someone doing something bad enough to get fired and then being allowed to say, well, I was laid off or I resigned, that's a common thing. That's a thing that happens. And in my example with Bill, Bill made a massively stupid mistake. Bill wasn't malicious. Bill was actually a really good employee. They just made an incredibly stupid mistake. And they had to be fired. There was nothing else they can do. If they didn't fire him, a lot of worse things were going to happen for the company. So what do I think happened with Tom Kenreck? Again, I don't believe he was quote unquote laid off. I think the D&D videos in and of themselves, like let's actually look at some numbers here. So we're gonna go to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm gonna see if I can find their actual, so here's the D&D YouTube channel. We're just going to look at the YouTube channel. So they have 632,000 subscribers. Their average video, depending on what's going on, like the recent Unearthed Arcana, the Scion video, got 65K views. If we go to the shorts, which are where a lot of the interviews that Kenreck was doing went, we're looking at sub 10,000 views in general, maybe barely over 10,000 views. In the interview ones in particular, they don't do particularly well. And for shorts should be getting you more views than your long form content. YouTube right now really, really pushes shorts. They have been for quite a while. And the fact that a channel that should be as popular as Dungeons and Dragons with over 500,000 subscribers is having a hard time getting above 50,000 views, and a lot of their videos get sub 10,000 views, depending on where we're looking and how far back we're going. So yeah, that's not great. Now, It's possible that they're more active on other social media platforms, things like that. But with how popular Dungeons and Dragons is, especially with all the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff and Stranger Things and everything Dungeons and Dragons and the D&D movie and stuff like that, the fact that the YouTube channel is just really not performing that well. And to be blunt, the YouTube channel is advertising. Like, that's what this is supposed to be. The YouTube channel is not supposed to be a money-making venture for them. It is pure advertising. If I was creating an ad that only got 50,000 impressions, that would be a huge waste of money. So what I think, and again, this is entirely conjecture, is Todd Kenreck was not getting the numbers that they wanted and hasn't been getting those numbers for a long time. Now, to me, it seems like D&D is pivoting. They put everything into 5.5, expecting it to revitalize 5th edition, and it had the exact opposite effect. More people are moving away from 5th edition than have at any other point in the history of 5th edition. Now, does that mean that it's dying or anything? No. It's still the number one tabletop RPG in the world. It's still doing better than probably any other company right now. Even Daggerheart, I will guarantee D&D sales numbers are higher than Daggerheart's. Because Daggerheart has one book, D&D has dozens of them. So 5.5 did not have the effect that they wanted. The market itself is changing pretty epically. And as we saw during the OGL debacle, there are people at Dungeons and Dragons that want D&D to fail. Like, some of their employees were actively fighting against the company and leaking outright lies and misinformation to try and damage Dungeons and Dragons. So what it looks like is D&D is pivoting. And to me, what this means is the stuff that we see coming from Dungeons and Dragons moving forward, the stuff that isn't in full production or that isn't done right now, or isn't mostly done right now, like the new Forgotten Realms books, they're going to be the same slop we've been getting. The new Dragon books, it's going to be the same slop we've been getting, because they were all created, they're all in finishing mode. They've already been designed and everything by now. But the stuff that we get after that, I think we're going to see a pivot, which D&D desperately needs. And unfortunately for Todd and Jess, it meant that they no longer fit with what the company, they no longer fit with the game plan of the company. So both of them are going on to other things, and yeah. Do I think that Todd is this evil, horrible, disgusting? No, I just don't think he was as effective at his job as they would have liked him to be. Now, is all that his fault? No. Again, D&D made a lot of missteps over and over and over again. If you look at I think it was the Radiant Citadel, Tales from the Radiant Citadel, or whatever that was. I did an in-depth review on that, and at that point, D&D was big into their diversity thing, where they went, yeah, this entire book, there was not a single white person that touched this book. It's all people of color, which is a really stupid marketing strategy that only worked in that short period of time where diversity was everything. And we're seeing all across the world, to be perfectly honest, that all these companies that were pledging diversity and stuff, they really didn't give a shit. They just wanted to make money off of it, and all of them are dropping it because it's no longer making money. And it was a mistake then. Some of the adventures were interesting, but a lot of them had a lot of bad writing in it, because you had a bunch of people that didn't know what they're doing, didn't have the experience to do something like this, and you wouldn't allow the people with experience to touch the book because they were white. And then the biggest problem I had with that, they're like, well, you could learn about all these other cultures. Cool. What cultures were they? We're not going to tell you. Only we're allowed to know what cultures they were. You will just get to see the made up versions of those cultures, and you have to accept that that's the best you get because you're wrong and you're evil and you're racist, and we're not, because we only look at someone's skin color, whereas you only look at someone's skin color and you're white, and that means that you're racist. So I think it's fairly obvious that D&D is turning a corner, and unfortunately it looks like Todd and Jess were victims of that change. In addition to most of the staff for Project Sigil and other things like that. I really, there have been quite a few different layoffs that have happened over the past year or two because the economy was in shambles. I really, truly hope they were able to lay off the people that were actively lying about Dungeons and Dragons to try and damage the brand. I really, really hope that all of them are gone. I vehemently despise those people just in general, and I don't believe that either Todd or Jess were a part of that. I think both of them really enjoyed what they were doing, or at least they enjoyed being able to work for Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's theoretically possible that Jess didn't particularly enjoy her job, and probably meant that she wasn't particularly good at it either. Because again, when you don't enjoy your job, you don't put as much effort into it. Again, I don't know. She might have been amazing at it, and this might actually just be she got a better job. But everything I'm seeing here says no. I think what's happening is D&D is turning a corner. They're going to be changing how they're doing things. I mean, the mere fact that the Scion came out and they specifically talked about, what were they called? I said it in my my video where I talked about this as a Scion, but I can't remember the word. But they tie directly to the Dark Sun campaign setting. The fact that that stuff happened shows that there has been a massive change in the direction of where D&D wants to take itself. So we'll see what's going. But for everyone claiming that D&D is dead and this is... No, I believe D&D is doing their best to right a ship that has gone wrong. And there's been a few casualties, of which both Todd and Jess are on there. Interested to hear from you guys. Do you think I'm reading too much into this? Do you think that Todd really was a one-person layoff? Do you think that Jess really did leave to take a new position? Or do you kind of agree with me that this smells a little bit too corporate? This smells a little bit too much like, hey, we got fired, but we don't want to say that. Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's going to be all for me today. I will see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.